The rock that killed him weighed about 26 pounds. Any grown man could have lifted it, if he could have reached it. Floyd Collins couldn't. He was lying face down in a passage 8 inches high, 55 feet below the ground, head pointing downhill, and the rock had his left foot. January 30th, 1925, Sand Cave, Kentucky. For 18 days they tried to get him out. A reporter crawled down to him, and above him, directly over his head, 10,000 people were eating sandwiches and buying balloons. But Floyd Collins' death was not the end of this story. William Floyd Collins was born on July 20th, 1887, in Auburn, Kentucky. His father, Lee Collins, spent his whole life trying to pull a crop out of land that was never going to give one. The farm sat on stone, a thin skin of soil laid straight over limestone, and sooner or later, every plow hit rock. The ground there is poor on top and hollow underneath. Central Kentucky is one huge slab of karst. Water has been dissolving that limestone for thousands of years, carving out empty rooms beneath the pastures. Sometimes the earth simply drops away in the middle of a field, and a black hole opens up, breathing cold air. Floyd had been climbing down into those holes since he was a boy. He barely went to school, and there was no such thing as training. In those years, caving didn't exist as a profession. No rope technique, no helmets, no rules, no rescue services. A man, a kerosene lantern, and a hole in the ground. That was it. He went alone. No partner, no backup, and usually nobody at home even knew which hole he'd gone down that day. But nobody knew the passages under that country better than he did. Floyd was thin, wiry, long-armed. He could do the one thing other men couldn't. He could squeeze through places where a body has no business fitting. That was what he was known for across the county. And that was what killed him. September 1917. On a slope near the family farm, Floyd notices something only he would notice. Cold air is drifting out of small openings in the ground, which means there's a big void down there, and it's breathing. He digs all the way into winter, and by December, he breaks into a system that will be called Great Crystal Cave. No cramped little burrow. Chambers, galleries, and gypsum crystals that in lamplight look like frost on the walls. For the Collins family, this is a chance. In April of 1918, the cave opens to tourists. Kentucky in those years lives on underground tourism. Mammoth Cave is right there. People drive to it from all over the country. And every man who owns a hole in the ground dreams of catching even a piece of that traffic. And then it all falls apart. The cave is beautiful, but the road to it is terrible. Crystal Cave sits off the main highways, and the only way in is a beat-up dirt track. The tourists simply never get there. They stop earlier, at caves that are closer. Opening a cave turned out to be easier than getting people to it. For years, he walks the occasional visitor through his chambers and watches other men's caves pull in the crowds. The conclusion writes itself, and it's simple. He needs another entrance, an entrance that stands right by the road. He didn't crawl into that crack because life was good. In central Kentucky in those years, something was going on that history would later call the Cave Wars. The automobile had gone mainstream, and families were driving south down the Dixie Highway on vacation. Every car meant tickets sold, a lunch, souvenirs. The cave owners figured out that the tourist traffic could be intercepted right there on the road, and they started doing it. Cappers stood along the shoulders. They'd flag down cars and inform the drivers that the cave they were headed to was closed, flooded, collapsed, on fire. But hey, there's another one right nearby, just as good. Competitors' road signs got twisted around, painted over, torn down. They spread rumors about each other. It escalated into lawsuits, arson, and fistfights. The winner was whoever's entrance stood closest to the highway. The beauty of the cave meant nothing. In that war, Floyd never had a chance. He was a first-rate explorer and a hopeless businessman. No money for billboards, no cappers of his own out on the road, no connections. Just his own body, a pick, and a lantern. There was only one move left. Find a new cave. Big, spectacular, with an entrance next to the road. Then the traffic would come to him on its own. There was no thrill-seeking in this, none at all. This was the calculation of a poor man who knew exactly one way to make a living. And that calculation was leading him toward a small, unremarkable hole that the locals had known about for years, and nobody had ever bothered with. They called it Sand Cave. It wasn't on Collins' land. It sat on a neighbor's property, and that was its whole virtue. From there, The main road was noticeably closer than it was from Crystal Cave. Floyd made a deal with the landowners. He does the work, he does the searching, and if a big system opens up under that scruffy little hole, he gets his share of the tourists who follow. From January of 1925, he worked there almost every day, and almost always alone. No expedition, no team. A pick, his hands, a lantern. The way a farmer clears out a clogged ditch. What passed for an entrance was a crack between rocks. Beyond it, the passage dropped in steep bends, twisted, narrowed. In the tightest spots, the crawlway was about 8 inches high. Cavers call a place like that a squeeze. Your body goes through by friction, rocks scraping your back and your chest. There's only one way to move in there. Flat on your belly, one arm stretched out ahead, the other pinned against your body, pushing the lantern in front of you. You breathe with half your chest, because there isn't room for a full breath. And here's the thing that matters most. In a passage like that, you cannot turn around. A man who goes in head first comes out backwards, blind, feeling with his feet for somewhere to put his weight. He can't see what's behind him, and he can't see what his foot is catching on. For 3 weeks, Floyd worked that passage wider, chipping off chunks of rock and hauling out rubble. He was sure of it. Past the tight spot, a chamber would open up. The air coming from below told him there was a void down there, and a big one. He was in a hurry. He'd been doing it that way his whole life, and his whole life he'd gotten away with it. Friday, January 30th, 1925. 37-year-old Floyd Collins goes down into Sand Cave alone. He takes a kerosene lantern. He does not take a rope or a second light, or a man to wait for him up top with a watch in his hand. He works his way down through the tight bends, forces himself through the squeezes, goes deeper. He travels about 150 feet in from the entrance and ends up 55 feet below the surface. That's the height of a 5-story building, except instead of a staircase, there's a winding gut where you can't stand up and you can't turn around. At some point, he notices the lantern is dimming. He's running out of fuel. He can't stay, so he turns back. Or rather, he starts working his way out backwards, because backwards is the only way out there is. In the tightness, he knocks the lantern. The light goes out. From there, he moves in total darkness, by feel. His foot searches for purchase, slips, and disturbs a rock. Above him, out of the ceiling, a slab of limestone breaks loose and drops into the crack, directly onto the spot where his left foot happens to be. The rock jams his foot solid. Behind it, gravel and rubble pour down from the ceiling and pack in around his body. Floyd is pinned nearly to the waist, lying on his stomach, head down the slope, his face almost pressed against cold stone. He tries to reach his foot. He can't. In that position, his arms simply don't come anywhere near the place where the rock is sitting. He can't sit up, can't roll onto his side, can't pull his knee in, and he can't see a thing. It's the kind of dark where your eye can't find your own hand. Above him, solid rock. The nearest human being is 150 feet away, through a belly crawl, and not one soul on the surface knows he's down there. That evening at the Collins house, they're waiting for him at supper. He doesn't come. The night passes without him, and only on the morning of January 31st do the neighbors walk over to Sand Cave, just to look. His coat is hanging at the entrance, so he's inside, so he's been down there nearly a full day. The men squeeze into the crack and can't get through. For a grown man with an ordinary rib cage, that passage is the wrong size. The one who gets furthest is a teenage boy from a neighboring family. He crawls deep enough to hear a voice. Floyd is alive. The voice from below is calm. His foot is under a rock, and he can't get it free. The news that goes back up is 3 words: stuck, alive, unreachable. On February 1st, his brother, Homer Collins, reaches him. He crawls down the same passage, finds Floyd, and passes him food and water. Homer tries to dig the rubble away from around his body with his bare hands, but there's nothing to work with and nowhere to work. No swing, no leverage, nowhere to put the debris. Every rock he pulls loose has to be handed back along a chain of men lying one behind another in the gut of the cave. The temperature underground there is about 54 degrees Fahrenheit, and it never changes. Up top, it's winter, it's raining, and water drips down constantly. Floyd is lying on wet stone, in wet clothes, motionless. A body that can't move doesn't make heat. The rock takes it out of him without stopping, hour after hour, day after day. He has no fatal injuries. His spine is intact. Everything from here on will be decided by cold, by stillness, and by time. By the evening of February 1st, the local papers are running the story of the man trapped in a cave. From Louisville, a young reporter nobody has ever heard of sets out for the cave. William Burke Miller is 21 years old. At the Courier-Journal, they call him Skeets, short for mosquito, because he's small. About 5'5", 117 pounds. He's a cub reporter making $25 a week, and up to this day he has never written anything that mattered. He drives out to Sand Cave to get material for a short item. Within 24 hours, he will be lying in the mud beside a dying man's face. At the entrance, one simple fact becomes clear. Out of everyone milling around up top, only a handful can fit into that crawlway. The rescuers need a man of the right size, and the right size, as it happens, is the journalist. They ask Miller to go down. He goes down. He crawls in head first through mud and water, pushing a lamp ahead of him. The passage narrows, the walls press on his shoulders. Water runs down inside his collar. A few yards in front of him is a stranger, held by a rock. Miller reaches Floyd and sees his face. Gray, wet, spattered with mud. He does what he can. He brings food. He gives him water. He rubs his face to warm him. He clears gravel from around his body by the handful and passes it back. He talks to him so he won't slide off into unconsciousness. And between the trips down, he climbs back up and he writes, in the first person. I crawled. I held his hand. I couldn't get him out. Journalism didn't work that way then. A reporter was supposed to stand off to the side of the event. Miller found himself inside it, and he didn't pretend otherwise. His stories go out over the wire and run in more than 1,200 newspapers across the country. America opens the paper in the morning and lands straight in that crack, next to a man lying underground who cannot stand up. For that reporting, in 1926, Miller will win the Pulitzer Prize. But right now, it's February of 25, and he's crawling back down. By Monday, February 2nd, a whole crowd of helpers has gathered at the entrance, and an idea is born that seems obvious. If the rock won't move, then just pull the man out. Pull harder. They fit Floyd with a harness. The rope is run all the way out through the crawlway to the entrance, and several men take hold of it. They pull. His body rises and jams against the stone ceiling hanging inches above him. The foot doesn't move. The rock is holding it exactly as tight as it was an hour ago. All the pulling achieves is one thing. It wedges his body harder between the floor and the roof. Floyd can't take it. They stop. Afterward, he's wrecked, but he stays conscious and keeps talking to the men who crawl down to him. What the attempt does make clear is something they should have understood earlier. As long as the rock is in place, pulling is pointless. Pulling only hurts him, so they try working on the rock itself. Miller goes down with an automobile jack and a crowbar. The plan is simple. Lift the slab an inch or two, just enough for the foot to slide out. In theory, that's the answer. In practice, it all comes down to geometry. You can only work with one hand, lying on your stomach, in cold water, half blind, because Floyd's own body is covering the exact spot you need to reach. The jack has nothing solid to push against. The floor crumbles. The ceiling crumbles. Miller works himself to exhaustion and comes back up with nothing. February 2nd passes. February 3rd passes. Men go down, they feed him, they give him water, they talk to him. They run an electric wire down and hang a light bulb near his head to give him some light and a little warmth. He's been in the same position for 5 days now, and on the surface everyone still believes there's time. What happened to him in those days is known from the men who crawled down and heard him. He never once changed position, head lower than his feet, cheek nearly against the wet stone, the roof right over his face, and not an inch to move a shoulder. All he had left free were his forearms and his voice. He asked for food, he asked for water, he asked people to pray with him, he asked them not to leave him. In his conversations with Miller, he stayed lucid. He recognized people, asked practical questions, wanted to know how the work was going. He talked about what would happen when they got him out, that he'd recover and go looking for caves again. A man pinned under a rock, planning his next expedition. Then the delirium would take him. Cold, hunger, and exhaustion did their work. His mind would drift, his speech would tangle, he'd call out to people who weren't there. Then he'd come back and talk clearly again. A legend grew up around that rock fast. The papers wrote about a multi-ton boulder crushing a daredevil. Nothing of the kind. The piece of limestone holding his foot weighed 26 pounds, the weight of a bucket of water. What was killing Floyd was geometry, a passage where you cannot bring your second hand to your own foot. Nowhere to turn, nowhere to swing, nothing to brace against. The cold and the time finished the job. Alive, conscious, talking, and nobody on earth could get him out. The roof over that crawlway had been bad from the start. Sand Cave is a young, loose cave, not solid limestone but layered rock, held together by nothing but clay. And all through those days, it's raining. All through those days, dozens of men are crawling back and forth along that passage, brushing the walls with their shoulders and their backs. At the entrance, they're burning fires to stay warm, and the frozen ground is thawing out. On February 4th, the passage collapses. In two places at once, between Floyd and the surface stands a plug of rock and dirt. Nobody can crawl to him anymore. Not Miller, not Homer, not any man alive. The route they've been carrying food and water along for a week has ceased to exist. Sound is all that's left. His voice still comes through the blockage, muffled, but it comes through. You can still shout back and forth with Floyd, but you can't pass him anything. No water, no food, no lamp. The wire with the bulb they ran down to his head is still intact, and it's the only thread connecting him to other people. From this day on, he is truly alone. He lies in the dark and hears voices above him that can't give him a thing. The men running the operation make the only decision left to them. If the horizontal passage is dead, they'll dig from above, sink a vertical shaft next to where Floyd is lying, and come at him from the side. The distance from the surface down to him is about 55 feet of packed dirt, clay, and rock. They run the numbers fast and, as so often happens, optimistically. Roughly 30 hours of work, a little over a day, and they'll have him. In reality, the shaft will take almost 2 weeks, and by the time it gets there, there will be nobody left to save. Up on the surface, in the field above his head, a city has grown in those days. Tents, campfires, field kitchens, electric lines, marquees. The whole country has read Miller's dispatches, and everybody wants to see it. Sunday, February 8th. About 10,000 people come to Sand Cave. The nearest town, Cave City, has fewer than 1,000 residents. In a single day, 10 times that many show up. The roads are jammed with thousands of automobiles, cars parked along the shoulders for miles. Neighbors haul tables out to the cave and sell sandwiches and lemonade. Souvenir stands appear, people sell balloons, musicians play, preachers sing hymns and gather little circles around themselves. Con men work the crowd, passing tins and collecting donations for the Collins family. Money the family will never see. People spread blankets and have a picnic. That Sunday earned a name that still makes your skin crawl: Carnival Sunday. Bulletins go out by telegraph and by radio, with reporters filing live from the scene. Floyd Collins is being discussed at every kitchen table in America. And below, under the feet of that crowd, under 55 feet of rock, a man is lying on wet stone, and they can't even get him a swallow of water. The crowd becomes a problem. The governor of Kentucky sends the National Guard to the cave, at first just to hold people back. Then the Guard, under Brigadier General Henry Denhart, takes command of the entire operation. And Floyd's family, his father, his brothers, his sisters, live through all of it right there, among the stalls and other people's tents, at the mouth of the cave where their son and brother is lying. The more people came, the louder a question got that had started as a whisper. Is there actually anybody down there? A rumor is an easy thing to start. Not one of those thousands of gawkers has ever seen Floyd, and none of them ever will. Only a handful ever crawled to him, and since the cave-in, nobody gets through at all. So, the crowd says, maybe the whole thing is made up. A newspaper trick to sell copies. Or a trick by the cave owners. The cave wars are on, and you couldn't invent better advertising for these caves. Dead or alive, Floyd Collins pulled 10,000 people out here in a single day, and isn't that exactly what they were all after? Word reaches the governor of the state. He demands an official inquiry. On February 10th, a military court of inquiry opens right there on the site. Brigadier General Denhart presides, with National Guard officers on the panel, everything by the book. Witnesses, sworn testimony, a transcript. They call the men who went down: Homer Collins, Skeets Miller, the rescuers who crawled the passage before the collapse. They're asked, did you see the man? Did you touch him? Was he pinned? Was he alive? And they answer, yes, I saw him. I held his hand. I gave him water. He's down there. On February 14th, the court issues its finding. Floyd Collins is genuinely inside Sand Cave, trapped in a narrow passage, and this is not a hoax. An official document, signed, final. Except by that point, there's nothing left to prove. For a week, the country argued about whether this man existed. And all that week, he was quietly going out in a crack beneath the feet of the people arguing. By February 14th, the day the court confirmed he was real, Floyd Collins was, in all likelihood, already dead. All that time, a few yards from the cave mouth, men are digging a hole. The last hope is a vertical shaft, roughly 6 feet by 6 feet, meant to go straight down and then punch a side passage across to Floyd. They dig it by hand, picks, shovels, buckets, a windlass. They refuse to use explosives on principle. Any charge could bring the whole layer down on the very man this is all being done for. Jackhammers, or any machine that could work that kind of ground, simply don't exist out here. The ground is lousy. Wet clay, layered rock, crumbling walls. Every stretch they get through has to be timbered, or the shaft folds in and buries the men working it. The shoring eats up as much time as the digging. As many as 75 men work on it. Shifts run around the clock, under floodlights, in the rain, in front of a crowd standing behind a cordon and watching. Progress is measured in inches. On a good day, they get down maybe 6 feet, usually less. The 30 hours they promised in the estimate are long gone. On February 11th, up top, the light bulb that hung down by Floyd's head goes dark. The wire isn't telling them anything anymore. Now nobody on the surface knows what they're digging toward. A living man or a body. His voice hasn't been heard in a long time, and they keep digging, in shifts, in wet clay, knowing they're almost certainly too late, and having no right to stop. Doctors would later determine that Floyd Collins died on or around February 13th. That day, the shaft wasn't even halfway there. On February 16th, the shaft finally reaches depth. From the bottom, they start driving a side passage, sideways and down, toward the place where Floyd is calculated to be. The first man into that narrow bore is a miner named Ed Brenner. He has a few last yards to cover. He reaches Floyd and sends a short message back up. The body is cold. There are no signs of life. Floyd Collins is dead. The coroner's estimate is about 3 days. The official cause, hypothermia, dehydration, and exhaustion. The rock did not crush him. He died because he lay motionless for 14 days on cold, wet stone, without proper food or water. They can't get the body out. The rock is still holding his left foot, the same rock that in 18 days nobody ever managed to reach. The side passage is unstable, the ground keeps giving way, and the command won't risk men's lives for a corpse. The rescue operation is called off. 18 days, tens of thousands of spectators, 75 men in a shaft, the National Guard, a military court, and the man is left exactly where he was on January 30th. The entrance to Sand Cave is sealed. The cave is officially declared his grave. Up in the field, where a week earlier they had been selling lemonade and balloons, they hold a memorial service. The family stands at the filled-in entrance. The crowd starts to drive away. The stalls fold up. The tents come down. Within a few days, it's an empty winter field in Kentucky again. And Floyd stays below, alone, in the dark, wedged in the same crack. His brother Homer never accepted that. To cut a new passage to the body, hire workers, and bring him out, you need money, and a farming family doesn't have it. So he does the only thing he can. He goes on stage. Homer tours with a vaudeville act, telling Floyd's story to the very same public that not long ago was eating sandwiches over his head. With that money, he hires men. On April 23, 1925, the workers cut a new passage, come at the body from the other side, and finally free it from the crack. Floyd is brought up to the surface just short of 3 months after he went down. They bury him on the family land, on a hillside above Crystal Cave, the cave he discovered and the cave that never made him $1. In 1927, his father, Lee Collins, sells the farm and the cave to a dentist and cave owner named Harry Thomas. The new owner quickly works out what he's actually bought. He moves Floyd's body from the family plot into the cave, puts it in a coffin with a glass lid, and puts it on display for tourists. His whole life, Floyd was looking for a cave that would draw a crowd. In the end, the crowd came for him. People paid at the gate, walked down underground, and looked at him through the glass. In March of 1929, the body is stolen. It's found nearby, in a field, and returned to the cave. But the left leg, the one the rock had held, is gone. After that, the coffin is chained down and moved to a far corner of the cave, away from people. And there it stands, for decades. Change comes only in 1961. Mammoth Cave National Park buys Crystal Cave and closes it to visitors. The tourists are gone, the attraction is dead, but the body is still underground, behind a chain, in the dark. For years, the family fights for a proper burial. In March of 1989, 15 people spend 3 days hauling the coffin and the headstone up out of the cave. Floyd Collins is buried in the Flint Ridge Baptist Church Cemetery inside the national park. 64 years after he climbed down into Sand Cave, he finally lies in the earth as a man, and not as an exhibit. His headstone says that here rests the greatest cave explorer ever known. Skeets Miller went into radio after all this, and spent nearly his whole working life on the air. To thousands of readers, he remained forever the reporter who crawled down to Floyd while he was alive and couldn't get him out. That same year, a ballad about Floyd Collins' death spread across the country, sung off records and on front porches. In 1941, Mammoth Cave became a national park, in no small part because the whole country had learned about these places because of Floyd. In 1951, Billy Wilder made Ace in the Hole, a film about a reporter who cashes in on a man trapped underground, and about the crowd that drives out to watch. Later came a musical. Sand Cave made one more thing clear. Getting a man out of a cave is a profession of its own. And in 1925, it simply didn't exist. Hauling on a rope, digging blind, taking orders from a National Guard general, that could never happen again. Specialized cave rescue services wouldn't appear in America for decades. Sand Cave is closed today. The entrance is sealed and nobody is allowed in. And the rock that killed him is still down there. 26 pounds of limestone in an 8-inch crack. That was enough.